What would you do if you had a 24-hour layover? We were originally going to go and sleep at the airport for 24 because at this point in our journey we were, 5 weeks into our trip? Pretty fast paced for myself especially. However, that seemed too boring. I suppose the luster of Kuala Lumpur got the best of us. So I pulled up booking.com on my phone at the airport just before we left and put together a real hasty plan. Malaysian airline was excellent, by the way. Food was great, the banana cake especially so, and it was cool to see all the landscape as we flew over large portions of Vietnam and other parts of Southeast Asia on our way to Malaysia. This was pretty far from your everyday view, especially for me because these tropical plants are not a New Zealand specialty by any means. And this made me want to go back to Vietnam at some point. And I know I will because there was a bunch of roads in Vietnam that I wanted to ride in that I didn't get a chance to. We did forget to do the online registration, which I say forget, but I didn't even know about. But it did take a little bit of fumbling to figure out. Then it was about an hour-long taxi ride into the city. There was an option to take the train, but we opted to take the taxi instead because the train was going to take much longer and we're on a bit of a time crunch. It was so nice to not have 28 taxi drivers trying to pick you up as soon as you exit the airport. No one hassles you here. There's no beeping on the road like back in Vietnam either, and way less bikes on the road. It's a hell of a lot harder too. Our hotel looked nice enough for one night, small windowless room as, it is standard around here apparently. And we threw our bags on the bed and we were off to Batu Caves. It was already nearly 6 PM by the time we got here. As you approach Batu Caves, you see this giant rock nestled into the heart of the city. And a giant statue pokes its head out over the wall. And as you approach it, the statue gets bigger and bigger. And the carvings on these temples get more vibrant. You would think the statue stops getting bigger at some point. But it doesn't. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger somehow. Until it dwarfs you. And the rainbow colors of the stairs, the maquis monkeys, the colorful temple decorations and the carvings. It makes you feel like you're at some sort of lost city. A civilization that used to exist in all its glory. Except, it's right here. The rainbow-colored stairs felt pretty endless, by the way, and it is steeper on the way down somehow. And a small bonding moment with another man who had to stop and catch his breath at the same time I did. He didn't speak any English, and I didn't speak what language he was, but we both knew we were both unfit. And he shall live in my heart. Batu Caves are made of limestone that is over 400 years old, older than the rocks that make up the Himalayas. The main temple is housed in a cave that is 100 meters high, and like I said, those endless stairs, you'll feel it as you get up there. And that statue that I couldn't shut up about is the world's tallest Lord Murugan statue at 42.7 meters, covered in 300 liters of gold paint. This cave is humongous and opens up widely. In the caves are small temples, and I don't feel like going in and being all touristy while they were having ceremonies. so I kept my respectful distance from the small temples. As you exit, you'll see more temples that are actively being worshipped, and the colors and the carvings are worth stopping and just taking it in. With the sun nearly setting on our way out of the temple, we had to decide somewhere else to go to round out our night. And because it was so hot and humid, we decided we should go somewhere that is indoors and well air conditioned. And where else would it be other than the shopping malls by the famous Twin Towers? Our Grab driver told us that the Twin Towers light up a different color each night. It wasn't lit yet, so we decided we should go in the mall while it got a bit darker. The malls here were massive, absolutely humongous. I knew that this was a luxury mall. Something to note is that there is actually Malay people here. There weren't a lot of Thai people in Central Phuket or Vietnamese in Lotte Mart, but there was actually a lot of Malay people here. The food court is also massive. I've seen malls with smaller footprint than this entire food court. We honestly had pretty damn hard time deciding on a meal here, and it's definitely a little more expensive than I'm used to in other parts of Southeast Asia, but also it's a mall, what do you expect? Anyways, the best part, of course, is that they have Baskin Robbins, a place from my Korean childhood. And then the biggest damn bookstore we'd ever seen. We spent more time in that bookstore just looking at random books than we did in every other store combined. There was just so much variety and choice. We weren't gonna buy anything, so this was just a really fun way to just check out some random books and have a bit of a laugh. And also their manga collection and like DIY collection was stunning. I wish we had that back at home. Also, there's a Hasselblad store here? Like, a store that just sells Hasselblad? I wish I could afford one. Though, I can see why people come and shop here. Great views out the windows too. The streets here in Malaysia is really busy. There's just more people and less space. And as we walked around trying to get a good view of the Twin Towers, and it did lit up magnificently, there was tons of people taking photos of it. It felt like we were kind of being in a wave of people constantly. And even though the sun had gone down, it just got too hot and sweaty, so for the time being, we got back to the hotel after picking up some water at a 7-Eleven. And I gotta say, I'm happy to see 7-Eleven back again. Though I didn't spend enough time in this one. The night at the hotel was comfortable. We had an early rise, out by 7, so we could do a bit of sightseeing before we left Kuala Lumpur. The old government and sultanate buildings are awesome, and as you walk around you can see the old buildings meld together with the new construction of the city. Not to mention, during the morning, there is very little heat. The earth hasn't warmed up yet, and it is a pleasant temperature to be walking around. Though it is still really humid. The only downside we saw on this walk was the homeless people. I suppose it is a phenomenon in any city that's large enough, but being the richest city that we have been to so far, it had the most amount of homeless people as well. The buildings here are just gorgeous. I could sit here and stare at some of these architecture for days and not get bored. There's so much variety in both architecture and time period around here. We then had a quick stop at Macca's for their breakfast menu, which wasn't that different from New Zealand, but the most important part why we stopped here was because they had a toilet. We then took a walk down to Petaling Street in Chinatown. The streets hadn't opened up yet, but you could just imagine how it would bustle when it is busy. Then surrounding it are Buddhist, Hindu and Chinese folk temples, and even a cathedral not too far away, each with its distinct deities and decorations. It's another place you can truly see how the city has evolved over time. I really wanted to walk around a lot more, but anything interesting wasn't really open before 9 or 10ish, and I did mark a bunch of points of interest I would love to come back to on my map. There's a lot more here to see than I had thought. It's still an hour grab ride back to the airport, so we just have to make sure that we're back on time, so we couldn't really dilly-dally. My impression of Malaysia was that it's a lot more modern than the other parts of Southeast Asia that I had visited. More cars, more modern amenities, but there's still a lot of the old left. I can see anyone who enjoys travelling for whatever reason coming here, be it culture, shopping, or sightseeing, or all of them. We came across this, I want to say a flea market on our wanderings. This was a really cool find. There was barely any tourists here, and there was so much cool old stuff being displayed. I actually quite enjoyed the landscape of Malaysia as well. It kind of reminded me of home in both Korea and New Zealand in a way. And for lunch we decided to stop at a mall about 10 minutes away from the airport because it was starting to get really hot again and we needed to be under some shelter and air conditioning. Dad and I may or may not have seen that there was Baskin Robbins here, and I really wanted to stop at one before we went home. Lunch and lunch dessert, A+. This airport was probably the easiest airport I've ever been to in my life. There's e-gate, e-check-in, and nothing took any time. The security was even easier. Put bags through x-ray, and not even body scanners. Easiest free-flowing security I've ever seen. We could have gotten here an hour before boarding and still would have been fine. Let alone 3 damn hours like I normally do. Well, okay, there is a secondary security point just before the gate, which is a bit more strict. But you've already checked in at that point, so... And this airport is also very clean and quiet. Honestly, a great airport, 10 out of 10. There isn't a deafening announcement that plays every 2 seconds, like in Bangkok. Which drove me absolutely nuts, even though I was laying over there for like an hour and a half. Can't. Overall, Malaysia was awesome. It far exceeded my expectations. This layover has put Malaysia on my definitely coming back list because there's so much here that I wish I could have gone and seen. And of course, right on the 24th hour mark in Malaysia, we're getting back on the plane to our destination of Indonesia. I hope you enjoyed watching. If you did, please subscribe and leave me a like. And I hope you have a good day. Take care. Peace.